Hey, ho! Here we go. What's up, everybody? It's me again. I'm back with another one. I know, 2 episodes in 2 days? Somebody is back on their bullshit. Anyway, I'm back on Reddit, reading stuff. It's another Am I the Asshole? It's nothing like yesterday's thing where I talked about vaginas for half an hour. It is going to be back to the Am I the Assholes. I read somebody's Am I the Asshole story and determine for myself whether or not I believe they are the asshole in said situation, offer advice, commentary, jokes, what have you. So sit down, buckle up, listen to me while you're doing chores, driving, whatever. I don't know. However you choose to listen to your podcasts is up to you, king or queen, or what's the gender neutral term for king or queen? Regent? Regent? Anyway, let's get into it. Okay, guys and gals and they, them friends, I am here and I am going to read. Get ready. Am I the asshole for throwing my friend's diagnosis in her face? Probably. I'm gonna. I don't know. It depends on the diagnosis, I guess. Do they have? Are you like? Is it like a mental thing where you're like, they have like BPD or depression or something, and you're like, that's not an excuse to be an asshole. In which case, I could see the logic there. Or is it like you're like, haha, you have cancer? In which case, asshole. Anyway, let's read and find out for ourselves, shall we? I've had a close friendship with Mia for 10 years. From the start, she was open about her borderline diagnosis, so it is borderline, BPD. Which helped me understand why her behavior toward me could sometimes be extreme. Yeah, it's fair. I've known several people with BPD in my time. I know them now. They're not necessarily bad people, but their emotions can spike and dip quite a bit. I mean, that's kind of the definition of what borderline is, you know what I'm saying? Like, their emotions are kind of all over the place. So it can be kind of a lot to manage, but I've known people who use it completely as an excuse to be a dick and treat people horribly, and some people who struggle with it, live with it, but are genuinely some of the best people I've ever met. So it depends, right? Let's see. Most of the time, I was her, quote, favorite person, which meant weeks of idealization followed by sudden devaluation phases. Yeah. In good times, we spent every free moment together, but in bad times, I'd apologize for days over minor things. Okay. I constantly watched what I said, how I said it, and what I better kept quiet about to avoid what I better keep. They said kept, but I think they mean keep. What I better keep quiet about to avoid triggering another devaluation wave. I would never pathologize her. This person's using a lot of unnecessarily large words to sound intelligent. I'm just going to throw that out there. But I digress. I just used one. Although that was appropriate of me. They're using words that aren't unnecessary for what they're talking about. But, you know, like using pathologize in this context, it is not necessary. But whatever. I would never pathologize her or bring her up her borderline diagnosis. I learned to walk on eggshells, carefully frame criticism, and swallow a lot. Pause. Think about it. Resume. This unbalanced our relationship, but I was willing to bear it for Mia because I understood the dynamics behind BPD. Yeah, like I said, it's really rough for them. It can be really rough for the people around them. I'm a big proponent of, again, you can't let as someone with severe mental illness, something about me, hi, you cannot let it dictate how you treat people, right? Like, if you're having a bad day, you're having a bad day, and that shit happens, right? But, like, if you're constantly treating people like shit and then being like, sorry, it's my BPD, or sorry, it's my depression, I have anxiety, whatever the fuck, like, you're using these mental diagnoses as an excuse to treat people like dog shit, then that's not, I don't rock with that, okay? Like I said, as somebody with severe mental issues that sometimes needs, you know, some isolation, sometimes needs to be left alone, sometimes needs some comfort, whatever. It's all about communication and about understanding, your own feelings, doing your best to work with them. Sometimes you fail, sometimes you succeed, but all in all, just doing your best, like everyone does. But like there would be times when you fail and you maybe lash out at somebody and you say something that you didn't mean, or it came out, you maybe did mean it, but it came out way harsher than you meant it to. And in those cases, you have to recognize when you have erred and apologize, despite the fact that, like I said, there may be reasoning behind it for like mental illness standards, but still understand that just because you have some sort of mental illness or issue or disorder, something like that, does not give you carte blanche to treat people however you want and get away with it. Okay? Anyway, we continue. About 3 years ago, she started questioning her diagnosis. Her therapy ended. She drove into ADHD content on Instagram. Oh, crap. She started to self-diagnose, didn't she? Right? She stopped going to therapy and started going to TikTok and Instagram and the internet to tell her what's wrong with her. This is a real serious, I don't know how recent this was, I didn't look, but this is a real serious epidemic right now of people self-diagnosing on the internet. Like, they're on TikTok scrolling right, and they see somebody be like, my ADHD stems, or whatever the fuck. And then they say, like, oh my god, I do that too, I must have ADHD. And then they just don't think any further about it. And now they let the fact that somebody on TikTok with ADHD, or says they have ADHD, did the same thing that they do sometimes. So now they believe they have ADHD, and now they make it their whole entire fucking personality. Like, it's happening so much. Like, I don't know what it is with this fascination with needing to have something wrong with you. Like, they need to have some sort of mental something to, I don't know, be more interesting in their mind, to be able to play the victim easier. Fuck if I know, right? Why people insist on, like everyone. There's no way that everyone in the world has these things. Like if you were to solely go off of what you see on the internet, you'd believe that everyone in the goddamn world has ADHD, is autistic, is depressed, has anxiety, yada, yada, yada. You'd believe that everyone in the livelong day has all these fucking maladies wrong with them. When the reality is, like, yes, these things exist, they are very real, and they are very hard to live with. I said, as somebody with diagnosed, like, legitimately issues, it's not fun, right? It's not a fad. And it's like, you ever see that video on TikTok where the bitches were like, oh my god, I love my mental illness. Bitch, are you high? What do you mean you love your mental... That tells me right now that you don't have one. If you, oh my god, love your mental illness, that means that you don't actually have one. Because anyone who actually has one does not love it. It is hell to live with serious depression, to live with serious crippling anxiety, to live with, BPD, or to be bipolar, or any of these fucking things that people actually, to be legitimately autistic. Not saying that being autistic is hell in general, but it can be. It can make everyday life a whole lot harder if you have those things, right? Legitimate ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, all these things, right, that are legitimate diagnoses that people do actually live with, that makes their everyday life way harder because of it, right? They do not love their mental illness, okay? They live with it, they work through it, and they still lead fulfilling, enjoying, happy lives at times. Some people don't, but people live with these things, and they get the most out of life if they can, but they do not love their mental illness, okay? So let's get that fucking straight. Let's go back. I gotta go back to the story now, but that was a little, if you listen to me, I go on tangents now and again about things I feel strongly about. Anyway, about 3 years ago, let's start the paragraph over again. About 3 years ago, she started questioning her diagnosis. Her therapy ended. She dove into ADHD content on Instagram. Read books, and eventually became convinced that her symptoms could be explained by ADHD. Sure. So she changed her diagnosis herself from BPD to ADHD. Those things are very different, okay? So you can't just decide your diagnosis is different than what a doctor, therapist, whoever diagnosed you with BPD, they know more about these topics than you do. It is their job. I'm not saying that they're infallible, but like, I would trust them before I'd trust TikTok, or a book that you decided to read that may or may not lean, into what your preconceptions are. We call that confirmation bias, okay? You go into something thinking you already have it, and so you look for all the information you can to agree with you. People do this a lot in politics these days, I'm sure you've recognized. Anyway, from my perspective, this was a misjudgment. The borderline patterns were extremely clear. Because she no longer had insight into her condition, her toxic behaviors became even more pronounced. Fantastic. Wonderful. So far, I'm leaning into this person not being the asshole, but again, we got 2 paragraphs left, so who knows? Things could shift. I tried to guide Mia gently through questioning, for example, by not jumping on her ADHD quote-unquote train, but even that led to new intense arguments. Okay? At that point, I just couldn't anymore. I had swallowed years of apologies, handled her outbursts, and now there wasn't even any insight into why these dynamics kept happening. I wanted to finally speak my mind honestly, hoping she might someday accept it. I also suspected she would immediately cut off contact. Well, sometimes, that's the risk you gotta take, right? Like, if you've been, like I said, for 10 years, she's been dealing with this girl's repeated emotional outbursts and emotional abuse at this point, and the hot and cold on and off, and it's fully understandable to be fed up with that. It's fully understandable for you not to want to deal with that anymore, right? And so it will behoove you in your own life to confront this person and tell them, hey, the way you're acting is hurting me, right? And hopefully your friendship is strong enough that they will take that and try to do better about it because they don't want to lose you, but that's not always the case. So, but you at the end of the day, you have to do what is best for you in your life, and sometimes that means cutting off people who hurt you, even if you've known them for a long time, even if you love them, even if they've, you've had a lot of memories together. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And that's the sad part about it. So hopefully, we have one last paragraph. Let's see where we're going here. So, we met in our regular cafe to talk. I laid everything out that had been weighing on me. Unfortunately, there was a chess tournament that day in the normally quiet cafe, making it noisy, and the tables were close together. I said loudly, "You have borderline! Accept it! You can't help that you have it, but you're responsible for what you do with it." People at the surrounding table stared awkwardly at their chessboards. As expected, she stood up, left, and later blocked me everywhere. I haven't heard from her since. I was relieved and also saw it as a final act of friendship, but I must admit, I said it with a certain satisfaction and hoped it would hurt her. Am I the asshole? Okay. So I was with this person right up until that last paragraph in the scenario, why did you loudly proclaim and draw attention to your friend's diagnosis, mental disorder, in public? Why did you do that? What was the purpose of that? What was the point of doing this in a public setting, this very private, personal conversation you had to have with this person? What was the point of doing this in a public place, and then not only doing it in a public place, but then being loud enough that everyone in that public place could hear what you were talking about? I said, these very deeply personal issues, talking about her behavior and her mental illness and stuff. Again, I completely understand the mindset of, being fed up and wanting to look after yourself and, let this person know that their behavior is, hurting you and that it's whatever. But, why do it in that way? That's what makes you the asshole, the way that you went about it. Not the content of what you were trying to say or what you were trying to communicate to her. It's the fact that you felt the need to do it not only publicly, but loudly. And publicly, right? And then that at the end there, I must admit, it said with certain satisfaction, hoped it would hurt her. See, and now you're coming from a place of malintent, right? You're coming from a malicious place with that. At first, when I was first reading, I thought you were coming from a place of, this is your friend, she has hurt you with her behavior, you are done with, this the sugarcoating and the pretending things don't bother you to keep the friendship or whatever, and you just need to get your You're in, your inside's outside, you're outside, inside, you're inside, outside, you're outside, inside. You know what I'm saying? You need to get what's in, what you've been holding back, you need to get it out and let them know. And that is perfectly understandable, but then you say at the end, but then when you did it publicly, and you said yourself, as you got satisfaction and hoped it would hurt her, which means that this wasn't about you communicating your feelings. This wasn't about you communicating your thoughts, what you've held back. This was about embarrassing her. This was about hurting her feelings, okay? This was about making her feel bad, right? And that's not... As much as I could understand the frustration, right? The years of resentment and frustration that have built up. To go into a situation like this with not the intent to be heard and seen and communicate, but to simply hurt someone that you have called your friend for a decade is fucked up, man. Like, regardless of everything that she's done, right? Like her behavior and stuff. And like I said, I was on your side for most of this. Like, I understand, I've dealt with people who have these mental illnesses and use them as a reason to be an asshole. I get it, it happens. And so I was with you, communicating your boundaries and trying to, be more communicative with her and help her come to terms with her own shit and be a good friend, and but while still, keeping your own peace. I was with you on all that. And then you did it at the end here where you publicly shamed her and got satisfaction out of hurting and embarrassing her in public. Like, what now, like I said, now I'm questioning the whole everything, because why would you do that? Like if this person is your friend, if this girl, Mia, or whatever her name is your friend, then why would you do that to her? Why would you get satisfaction out of hurting her? Because of the years of resentment? Like I said, I understand that, but in no scenario is this acceptable to approach this topic and these things in this way. Like I said, this is a private conversation you should be having with her privately, not in front of a fucking cafe full of chess players. Weird ass audience, but is what it is. It shouldn't have been an audience at all. Like I said, these are deeply personal things that you should be discussing in private, not anyway. Okay, so final verdict, I guess, is as much as I do understand this person's mindset and what they're feeling and where they're coming from, they are the asshole in this scenario based solely on the way that they handled this situation. Not the feelings in general, not the what they've been dealing with and how they've built up all this resentment and everything like that. That's all understandable. But the way that you decided to go about it at the end there, and the satisfaction you drew from hurting your friend, quote unquote's feelings, is what makes you the asshole here. 'Cause that's fucked up, man. Like, God. Like mental illnesses and shit like that are deeply personal things to people. And they are not things that people who legitimately have them just share with just anyone, I'm not talking about these TikTok people on TikTok talking to everyone who will listen about their goddamn quote-unquote diagnosis that they may or may not actually have. I don't know. I don't know these people. But I do know that for me personally, and people in my life that I know that have these illnesses, they're not something that they just talk about. You don't just throw out that. Like, there are things that you would talk about with your friend, with people that are close to you. The people that are close to you know about, so they can help you with them if you need them to. But just to shout about your mental illness in a room full of people, Jesus, man. Anyway, that's probably the end of this one here. Not nearly as long as yesterday's vagina episode, but still, good little chunk of talk here. Chunk of talk. Sometimes I just be saying shit. Let's get to the end of it. Welcome back, everyone. I say welcome back like you aren't just continuously. I say welcome back because like after I do that shit, I usually get up, kind of stretch out a little bit, decompress, get some new perspective on things, you know what I'm saying? And then come back and do this little outro thing that I do. I know for you, it's one right after the other, so welcome back to me, I guess. At any rate, thanks for listening, hanging out, seeing what was what in the realm of Reddit with D-Man the Voice today. Check out the pod. It's everywhere. I'm a white guy with a podcast internet. I know, original. It's everywhere you get your podcast. Check it out. Listen, whatever. I am also a voice actor, so I have voiced in projects all over the place. A lot of anime and stuff. Check out the Annie Short app. I'm all over the place over there. See if you like it. Yeah. No, so that's the shameless plug. Before I leave, I do the special message, everybody. And today's special message, man, I always try to make these poignant. There's a word for you, poignant. I try to make these poignant. I try to make them, thoughtful. I try to give some encouragement. I try to give some perspective, And with this one, man, like I said, if you're somebody with severe mental illness, first and foremost, don't self-diagnose. Okay? Don't just assume that you have these. Don't go on the internet and look at these things and see other people on the internet with similar, whatever traits to you and just be like, oh, well, this person also does this, so I must have this thing that they say they have. That's not how it works. Okay? You can't do that. You can't just diagnose yourself like that. You could have your suspicions, you can have your thoughts and feelings and be like, I think that I might be autistic, I might have ADHD, I might have depression, anxiety, what have you. That is when you go seek a medical professional and get a professional opinion, go through tests and stuff like that. And like I said, I'm not saying medical professionals are infallible, but I'm saying they are working from a lot more educated viewpoint than you are on these things. I mean, maybe if you want to do it yourself, fucking use it as motivation to go to school and learn about it yourself. And then you can self-diagnose once you're, educated on it. I'm against self-diagnosing in general. Even doctors shouldn't self-diagnose, always get second and third opinions on shit. But the point is, don't just hear some shit on TikTok or Instagram or whatever and be like, oh yeah, I'm autistic now. Don't do that, okay? Because that's going to fuck up, because you may very well have something in going on inside you that needs to be addressed, and so you can figure it out. But all that self-diagnosing this shit's going to do is put you on a wrong path and make things worse. Right? So, because you're just operating with this assumption that you have this thing and now are trying to use tools to cope with this thing that you may not even have. And it could exacerbate or make things worse. That's something you actually do have. So, just don't. Okay, just don't. It's not cute. Also, it's not quirky. It's not fun. It's not trendy to have a mental illness. Okay, so don't go looking for it, right? Don't go looking for a mental illness. Don't go around here being like, well, or don't, and certainly don't invent one knowing you don't have one. That's super shitty. But don't wish for these things, okay? Because people who legitimately have these things, me, it's not fun, okay? And it's not a trend, and it is crippling, okay? It can take away huge parts of your life, okay? It can put you into states that you think you never get out of, where you don't talk to friends and family, you don't get out of bed, you don't do anything, you call out of work, it can completely derail your life if you let it, okay? So these things are not a trend. So don't treat them like these fun little quirky personality traits, okay? They are illnesses, they are disorders, they are things to be managed and understood and worked with, but never to be sought after. All right? And to go to the final thing, to go to the back to the story, kind of draw it back to that, is as I've said, just because you have something going on with you emotionally, mentally, whatever, does not give you the right to treat people however you want. You can't just treat people like shit and then say, sorry, it's my BPD. Sorry, I was depressed. Sorry, I was like, apologize for sure. If you lash out at someone and you do something, say something you regret, apologize, and maybe explain. Be like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that. I struggle a lot with whatever my depression, my BPD, whatever. Like, I struggle, and that's not an excuse for the way what I said. And I genuinely am so sorry. I'm working on it. I'm working on doing better. Please, if you could find in your heart to forgive me, give me some grace, I would so appreciate that. But again, completely on me. I apologize for what I said, and just, I'm doing my best, to do better. Like, that is, because I said people fuck up. You fuck up, your mental illness makes you say and do things that you wouldn't normally say or do. But it's about how you respond, right? How you handle that shit. And then how you genuinely try to do better going forward so that shit doesn't happen again. And it probably will, but the hope is that you're able to meter it to a point where, like, you recognize the signs of you being in some kind of spiral or spike or downtime, whatever, and know how to handle that within yourself. That's what I'm talking about with tools. Getting the proper tools to handle what all is specifically going on with you. Okay? And using the wrong tools can lead to catastrophic results. So make sure you know what you're dealing with, and make sure you build the tools that best work for you on how to handle it in your everyday life, so that you don't become this piece of shit who just treats people however they want because they have a mental illness. Okay? So, all that being said, listen to me. Don't say I'm wrong, say I'm right. Don't matter to me. I am right, to be clear, but I can't force you to see that. So, at any rate, thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. I'll talk at y'all in the next one. Bye.